Nothing is more dangerous than a dogmatic worldview. Nothing more constraining, more blinding to innovation, more destructive of openness to novelty. I am, somehow, less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. We pass through this world but once. Few tragedies can be more extensive than the stunting of life. Few injustices deeper than the denial of an opportunity to strive or even to hope by a limit imposed from without, but falsely identified as lying within. We have become, by the power of a glorious evolutionary accident called intelligence, the stewards of life's continuity on Earth. We did not ask for this role, but we cannot abjure it. We may not be suited to it, but here we are. The most important tactic in an argument next to being right is to leave an escape hatch for your opponent so that he can gracefully swing over to your side without an embarrassing loss of face. We are here because one odd group of fishes had a peculiar fin anatomy that could transform into legs for terrestrial creatures. Because the Earth never froze entirely during an ice age. Because a small and tenuous species arising in Africa 250,000 years ago has managed so far to survive by hook and by crook. We may yearn for a higher answer, but none exists. We are the offspring of history and must establish our own paths in this most diverse and interesting of conceivable universes. One indifferent to our suffering and therefore offering us maximum freedom to thrive or to fail in our own chosen way. The most erroneous stories are those we think we know best and therefore never scrutinize or question. Skepticism is the agent of reason against organized irrationalism and is therefore one of the keys to human social and civic decency. Life is short and potential studies infinite. We have a much better chance of accomplishing something significant when we follow our passionate interests and work in areas of deepest personal meaning. The human mind delights in finding pattern. So much so that we often mistake coincidence or forced analogy for a profound meaning. No other habit of thought lies so deeply within the soul of a small creature trying to make sense of a complex world not constructed for it. Science is not a heartless pursuit of objective information. It is a creative human activity. Scientists have power by virtue of the respect commanded by the discipline. We live with poets and politicians, preachers and philosophers. All have their ways of knowing, and all are valid in their proper domain. The world is too complex and interesting for one way to hold all the answers. When people learn no tools of judgment and merely follow their hopes, the seeds of political manipulation are sown. People talk about human intelligence as the greatest adaptation in the history of the planet. It is an amazing and marvelous thing, but in evolutionary terms, it is as likely to do us in as to help us along. The most important scientific revolutions all include, as their only common feature, the dethronement of human arrogance from one pedestal after another of previous convictions about our centrality in the cosmos. I am somehow less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and seed shops. Homo sapiens are a tiny twig on an improbable branch of a contingent limb on a fortunate tree. No geologist worth anything is permanently bound to a desk or laboratory, but the charming notion that true science can only be based on unbiased observation of nature in the raw is mythology. Creative work in geology and anywhere else is interaction and synthesis. Half-baked ideas from a bar room, rocks in the field, chains of thought from lonely walks, numbers squeezed from rocks in a laboratory, numbers from a calculator riveted to a desk, fancy equipment usually malfunctioning on expensive ships, cheap equipment in the human cranium, arguments before a road cut. I would not choose to live in any age but my own, advances in medicine alone, and the consequent survival of children with access to these benefits should preclude any temptation to trade for the past. But we cannot understand history if we saddle the past with pejorative categories based on our bad habits for dividing continua into compartments of increasing worth towards the present. These errors apply to the vast paleontological history of life, as much as to the temporally trivial chronicle of human beings. I cringe every time I read that this failed business, or or that defeated team has become a dinosaur is succumbing to progress. Dinosaur should be a term of praise, not opprobrium. Dinosaurs reigned for more than 100 million years and died through no fault of their own. Homo sapiens is nowhere near 1 million years old and has limited prospects, entirely self-imposed, for extended geological longevity. The facts of nature are what they are, but we can only view them through the spectacles of our mind. Our mind works largely by metaphor and comparison, not always or often by relentless logic.
When we are caught in conceptual traps, the best exit is often a change in metaphor, not because the new guideline will be truer to nature, for neither the old nor the new metaphor lies out there in the woods, but because we need a shift to more fruitful perspectives, and metaphor is often the best agent of conceptual transition. Objectivity cannot be equated with mental blankness. Rather, objectivity resides in recognizing your preferences and then subjecting them to especially harsh scrutiny, and also in a willingness to revise or abandon your theories when the tests fail, as they usually do. Science is an integral part of culture. It's not this foreign thing, done by an arcane priesthood. It's one of the glories of the human intellectual tradition. Obsolescence is a fate devoutly to be wished, lest science stagnate and die. Nothing matches the holiness and fascination of accurate and intricate detail. Current utility and historical origin are different subjects. If we use the past only to creature heroes for present purposes, we will never understand the richness of human thought or the plurality of ways of knowing. Geology gave us the immensity of time and taught us how little of it our own species has occupied. The dogmatist within is always worse than the enemy without. I had learned that a dexterous, opposable thumb stood among the hallmarks of human success. We had maintained, even exaggerated, this important flexibility of our primate forebears, while most mammals had sacrificed it in specializing their digits. Carnivores run, stab, and scratch. My cat may manipulate me psychologically, but he'll never type or play the piano. My potential salvation must remain an unswerving commitment to treat generality only as it emerges from little things that arrest us and open our eyes with aha, while direct, abstract, learned assaults upon generalities usually glaze them over. Science is no inexorable march to truth, mediated by the collection of objective information and the destruction of ancient superstition. Scientists, as ordinary human beings, unconsciously reflect in their theories the social and political constraints of their times. Knowledge and wonder are the diet of our worthy lives as intellectual beings. We are storytelling animals and cannot bear to acknowledge the ordinariness of our daily lives. We reveal ourselves in the metaphors we choose for depicting the cosmos in miniature. The causes of life's history cannot resolve the riddle of life's meaning. We are glorious accidents of an unpredictable process with no drive to complexity, not the expected results of evolutionary principles that yearn to produce a creature capable of understanding the mode of its own necessary construction. Art is limitation. The essence of every picture is the frame. Alter any event, ever so slightly and without apparent importance at the time, and evolution cascades into radically different channel. Our planet is not fragile at its own timescale, and we, pitiful latecomers in the last microsecond of our planetary year, are stewards of nothing in the long run. In science, fact can only mean confirmed to such a degree that it would be perverse to withhold provisional assent. I suppose that apples might start to rise tomorrow, but the possibility does not merit equal time in physics classrooms. If the misery of our poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Revolutions usually begin as replacements for older certainties, and not as pristine discoveries in uncharted terrain. So much of science proceeds by telling stories. Science tries to record and explain the factual character of the natural world, whereas religion struggles with spiritual and ethical questions about the meaning and proper conduct of our lives. The facts of nature simply cannot dictate correct moral behavior or spiritual meaning. We must categorize and simplify in order to comprehend. But the reduction of complexity entails a great danger, since the line between enlightening epitome
vulgarized distortion is so fine.